Hello, my name is Phil Reichhoff. I'm the Director of Fitness and Performance and Assistant Athletic Director at Cape Henry Collegiate in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Thanks for turning on this webinar and taking interest in how we train at Cape Henry. My goal is by the end of this presentation, you have some ideas and concepts that you can apply to your setting almost right away. So hopefully a lot of this stuff is very applicable and helps you guys impact the athletes that you train. So the title of this is Autoregulation and Long-Term Athletic Development and Meeting Athletes Where They Are. And we're going to dive into really each component of this title and how it can translate to developing athletes at the youth level, but really across the lifespan. So I just want to say welcome, as I said, and a big thank you to obviously to TeamBuildr. A lot of the concepts in this were developed because we are a TeamBuildr school, and we use their platform to run an auto-regulatory, multi-level, vertically aligned training system. And also a thank you again to everybody that turned on the webinar because without coaches that take an interest, it really is humbling for people to take an interest in the way we train. Okay, so let's get into it. So developing the youth athlete is really unique. We deal with a lot of variables that are out of our control. Growth and maturation is probably the most uncontrollable, unpredictable, and most of the time unseen variable that we deal with. So the two graphics to the side illustrate that. So Dwight Howard, an NBA Hall of Famer, at age 15 was 5'8", at age 16 6'9", and is currently 6'11". So the changes that happen to his coordination and his body structure and the way he moves through that growth span is unlike any other population. And another example with Anthony Davis, probably a future Hall of Famer, and his growth and maturation. So we're constantly trying to train through these changes and make it so the athlete has their best chance to succeed, even while going through growth and maturation. So a lot of what we talk about as far as auto-regulation really comes back to the need to adapt to the athlete who is rapidly changing. Their hormonal environment is changing. Their coordination, because of the length of their limbs, impacts their body, their brain's ability to self-organize. And all of that is happening under the surface at a really fast rate. So we need a training program that can keep up with that fast rate of change. So when I first got to the youth level, I realized that traditional sets, reps, and percentages probably wouldn't work for this population because they are constantly changing. And we'll also get into what they have on their plate as far as playing maybe multiple school sports, one club sport year round, and maybe a demanding academic schedule that takes their time from maybe at my school 8:20 to 3:20 5 days a week. So there's a lot of variables that are working against or pressing on the youth athlete that might not necessarily be the case at other levels that have more control over their day, that have access to campus food, that maybe are towards the end of their growth. There are different stressors at different levels, but I think the unique thing about the youth level is kind of the cocktail of stressors and how we have to adapt our training program to maximize them. So I wanted to set the scene with understanding what the youth athlete are going through so that we can build a program that works for them. Okay, so the NSCA 10 pillars of long-term athletic development, this is something that I used as a guiding principle when I first got to the youth level. So I really was looking for some guiding lights, some North Stars that I could then build our program out of. So at the youth level, every school is different. The culture of the school is different. The bell schedule is different. The sports you offer is different. So you really have to adapt to your unique setting, but still there needs to be a standardized best practices. So I turn to the NSCA 10 pillars and I try to make our decisions kind of looking back at these 10 pillars and understanding, are we working towards these or away from these in general? So for the purposes of this presentation, I want to talk about the specific pillars that I think relate to autoregulation. So let's move through those. So the first one, long-term athletic development pathways should accommodate for the highly individualized and nonlinear nature of growth and development. So we just spoke about that. growth and maturation is nonlinear. So that means that students will have peaks and valleys in their development, and we need a training program that adapts to those peaks and those valleys. All youth should be encouraged to enhance physical fitness from early childhood with a primary focus on motor skill and muscle strength development. So the key there for me is a primary focus on motor skill and muscular strength. So when we talk about building coordination and building strength and building better movers, a lot of that comes down to this bullet point right here. And we'll obviously dive into how we build motor skills and muscular strength as we go through the presentation. So we'll skip down to number 6. Youth should participate in physical conditioning that helps reduce risk of injury to ensure their ongoing participation. So without ongoing participation, you can't get better. If you get hurt and you stop training or you stop practicing, your development is stunted. So we have to keep kids in the weight room, on the court, on the field, so that they can develop. If they miss math class, they're going to struggle on the exam at the end of the year. So we need to keep them in our classes so that they can continue to develop. And we need to develop a training program that can ebb and flow as their bodies change and hurt or ache, or they're in season or out of season, or maybe they're in 2 seasons at once, which is unique to the high school level. So we have to build a program that adapts to them so that it ensures their long-term participation. So number 8, practitioners should use relevant monitoring and assessment tools. So we need to monitor and assess them on a continuous basis. As you'll see later in the program, we monitor and assess our students daily. So because of the rapid changing in their body and in their development, I don't think that it's appropriate to just test them every 3 weeks, every 4 weeks, or whatever the traditional cycle might entail, because their bodies are changing so rapidly that we would be doing them a disservice and maybe making them worse by not assessing them at a really, really consistent at short intervals. So we really focus on monitoring and assessment to be able to drive where we go with them. Number 9, right below it, practitioners working with youth should systematically progress and individualize training programs. So it is challenging at the youth level to individualize training programs because I'm responsible for the development over 1,000 students. So it's a challenge to write individual programs. But what you can have is a multi-level approach that meets students where they are based on beginner, intermediate, and advanced, and then have some gray area in between that. So with combining consistent monitoring and assessment with a systematic progress and individualization of that multi-level program, we're able to accomplish these two pillars, and I'll outline that here in the coming slides. So the next graphic I wanted to share was from Roger Lloyd with his long-term athletic development model and talking about where the focuses are in different age ranges. So the pink one is for females and the blue one is for males, but as you can see, there's a lot of similarities. Here I want to highlight the age ranges that I mostly work with, and what is the main focus during that time frame. So what you can see is everything is a focus, everything is in bold, everything is in color. So we do have to focus on a lot. But what I want you to turn your eyes to specifically is the strength and hypertrophy. So hypertrophy, the need for hypertrophy is a little bit extended, and it's necessary to build hypertrophy through that range so that it can translate to strength and power. So there's a little more, in my interpretation, a little bit more lean to traditional linear periodization, and you'll see how we touch on that later. But this is just kind of to set the scene and to kind of give you a general idea of what's needed at different levels. Okay, so let's get into the sets and rep scheme. So the key here is the building a scalable training system. So it's really important when you're working with a large range. You could have an 8th grader that is advanced and a senior that is a beginner. And you really need to have a situation where your sets and reps are scalable. So let's dive into it. So when I first got to the high school level, I knew that I needed to adapt my programming. So I really looked all around the world of high school strength conditioning, and I tried to find find the best out there. And a lot of the most veteran high school coaches were pointing me in the direction of APRE, okay? Auto-regulatory progressive resistance exercise. The key here is on the auto-regulatory. So in the underlined section, you can see if an athlete exceeds the prescribed reps, the weight increases. If they fall short, the weight decreases. This allows their training max to consistently update with their progression and their maturation. And one of the coaches that I really learned a lot of this from was Gary Schofield. And Gary used to say, if a kid fails a test or a quiz, or if the boyfriend or girlfriend talks to them in the hallway, their max can go up and down. So those are the kind of variables that we're working with here. And it's really important to have a training program where they can push themselves every day. So a lot of my concepts come from the APRE system and how it quickly adapts to how you feel on that day. Because you can't always be at your best, but you can be at your best that day. So if the workout prescribes 8 reps, and on that day I can do 12, then I should. If the workout calls for 8 reps, and on that day I can do 3, then I should. And then the next workout, it'll adapt. And even if you feel better or worse that day because of the as many as possible sets, you'll still be able to push yourself, and your max will consistently gradually increase. And we'll go a lot deeper in how the long-term progress of a system like this works. But I encourage you guys to look deeper into APRE, but I wanted to introduce it because it's a key foundational element of how we built our program. So the next foundational element that we weaved into our program was the traditional 5-3-1 by Jim Wendler. My opinion, like I said, it's a foundational strength program. I first was introduced to it as an undergraduate assistant at East Carolina because I needed to learn how to program with percentages. And I think it really lays the foundation for almost all strength conditioning programming. And I feel like it's maybe the first one that you need to learn. And after that, you can have a lot of creative freedom within it. Outlined here is the traditional 5-3-1. You do 3 weeks of fives. I'm sorry, skipping ahead. You do 1 week of 5, 1 week of 3, 1 week of 1, and that's the process. Now, what I found was I thought that was too short a time in each phase for young athletes to learn the movements and to fully maximize their ability in those rep schemes. So what we did is we took this system and we expanded it and then combined it with APRE. So let me skip ahead and we can dive into how we do that. So this is where we get into our programming. So I hope the last previous slides kind of gave some background and some feedback and some groundwork, and it also can allow you to dive deeper into those different elements on your own study. So what we did was we expanded the traditional 5, 3s, and 1s, okay, to add some hypertrophy, to add some higher rep ranges, and then we expand these cycles into 3-week phases. So you would spend 3 weeks in the weeks of 8s that you can see outlined there, every day trying to work up to as many reps as possible with 75% of your 1 rep max. And then after 3 weeks, then we do 3 weeks of 5s and then 3 weeks of 3s. Every day, your estimated 1 rep max goes up or down based on your performance on set 6. The goal is to do, for example, 8 or more, 5 or more, 3 or more. If you do more than the prescribed reps of the weeks of 8s, then your max will go up. If you do less, your max will go down. This allows for that auto-regulatory advancement based on how they're feeling that day and based on how they're progressing that day. And I wanted to make a note here because we're going to get a lot more detail here in a few slides. This is what we call our max effort rep scheme. So we've used this with bench, squat, deadlift, chin up, and shoulder press. And we progress systematically through this. But whatever exercise you deem as primary, you can apply these rep schemes to that section of your program. We call this the 853 method. It's just an adapted version, like I said, of a bunch of different programs, and how we feel like it develops the athlete the best at where they are at that time. Okay, so now let's get into accessory work. So the important part of accessory work is, like the graphic shows below, I put this up on the wall, up on our TVs in our weight room when I feel like our students aren't really prioritizing the accessories because everybody wants a big bench, right? But then when you prescribe dumbbell row, there's not as much buy-in. But in my opinion, this is where the workout happens. Really, the primary exercise is a result of all the work you've done in the accessory exercises. So we progress it as follows. During your week of eights, you're doing 3 sets of 12. During your weeks of fives, you're doing 3 sets of 10. And during your weeks of threes, you're doing 3 sets of 8. So as you can see, the volume decreases, the weight increases, and we make the heavy weeks heavy and the light weeks light. We focus on volume, focus on strength, and we kind of focus on absolute strength power in that last phase. And we call this our repeat effort rep scheme. So this is something that like we would do, for example, with a row variation, maybe a single leg variation, maybe biceps, triceps, shoulder accessory, anything you feel like is necessary to build the hypertrophy that is necessary to produce strong primary exercises. So again, just like that iceberg there, what exercises you choose for the accessories, in my opinion, really fuel the progress you're going to see in your primary exercises. We keep it very simple. The kids know what the reps are. The memes of you write the whole workout and then they ask how many reps is it. We try to keep it very, very consistent so that kids know exactly how many reps they're doing so they can focus on doing it right. So that's how we approach our accessory exercises. And we'll move on to our last rep scheme. Okay, so this is our most advanced rep scheme, and I'm going to get into here very shortly what program gets our dynamic effort rep scheme. Now we reverse program our dynamic efforts. We want to tap into some post-activation potentiation here. So as the weeks progress, these exercises get lighter in load. So during our week of eights is our heaviest dynamic effort phase. Now, when we talk dynamic effort, in my definition of it, it's anything explosive. So we've used this with something simple as weeks of eights, we're doing box jumps. Weeks of fives, we're doing repeat vertical jumps. Weeks of threes, we're doing band assisted pogos. That's an example of how we can progress that. We've also done it with band resisted box squat. We've done it with close grip pause bench. So it is an accessory that feeds whatever goal we have with that population. But the key really with the rep scheme is we reverse program it. So when you hit a back squat of 90% for a set of 3, and then you follow that with maybe 5 reactive vertical jumps, you're going to feel a post-activation potentiation transfer to that, similar to taking a donut off a baseball bat. And that's what we want to feel as we go through this progression. Choosing the exercises, which is what we're going to dive into here soon, is something that's based on what level the athlete is, what experience they have. But I think reverse programming this provides a nice contrast. It gives them a taste of contrast throughout the entire, 3, 6, 9 weeks. And it builds them to something very explosive. I use the race cars all the time because by the time we get to threes, I want them to be a Formula One car. I want them to be able to go to 20 miles an hour to 120 miles an hour like that. And that's what we want in our program with our highest level kids. Okay, so now I hope that we've been equipped with rep schemes. So now we need to apply exercises to the rep schemes. So we're going to get into exercise selection, how we build our programs now that we have sets and reps. So as I mentioned, we have a multi-level training program. So we have what we call level 1, level 2, and level 3. Basically entry, intermediate, and advanced. And you can see here the overarching goals. I'm big on guiding principles. When I write the programs, I have this printed out and taped to the wall, actually right behind this computer. And when I'm looking at this, this is my guiding principles when I write the level 1 program, level 2, and level 3, so that I can look up and say, okay, does this accomplish my principles here? So for level 1, general physical preparation. They've never been in a weight room before. So we're talking body weight, multi-directional, just full body exercise, which bleeds into coordination, which bleeds into confidence. The number one most transferable trait of exercise is confidence. These level 1 kids, I want to, when they leave our room, I want them to feel like the best they've ever felt, because then we've got them hooked and then they'll follow the program for long. Remember in the first couple slides when we talked about ensuring long-term participation. So we need level 1 to feel really good about what they're doing. So when we move to level 2, we're trying to build skills and exercise. So the same way that shooting a free throw is a skill, a squat, a bench, a deadlift, these exercises are skills. Even on something as simple as a bicep curl, the mind muscle connection to really get the most out of that is a skill. In level 2, we're trying to build that skill. We're also trying to accumulate volume. Again, going back to our principles, hypertrophy is important for developing the youth athlete. So we are trying to accumulate volume and accumulate enough volume that we get to that strong enough area. Now, this is different for every sport, every team, different genders. So it takes a little bit of interpretation to know for your setting what is strong enough. But I think we all can imagine that at some point, just stacking on more weight isn't going to transfer to the court or field or pool or wrestling mat or what have you. So once we get to strong enough, which we've developed metrics for in our own setting, then we move to level 3. So level 3, we already have the engine. Now it's time to maintain that engine, continue to build it, but we want to take that engine out on the racetrack on a regular basis so they can really start to use that horsepower. So level 3 is explosive strength, rate of force development, and then again, transfer to the court or field. I feel like sport-specific training is probably overplayed in our industry, especially at the youth level. In general, everything is general physical preparation. But if there's about 10% of our program that we focus on sports specific, it's in that level 3 program. These are kids that are normally juniors or seniors. Most of our committed college athletes are on this level 3 program. And we're trying to really fine tune and solve problems that their coaches are seeing and apply it to our weight room program. So that's kind of, like I said, guiding principles. So now the rep schemes that we assign to different levels. So we did a deep dive into our rep schemes. So not every level gets every rep scheme. When we talk to level 1 only works through the repeat effort cycle. They're doing 3 weeks of 12s, 3 weeks of 10s, 3 weeks of 8s, because we want to keep it simple, consistent, and focus on hypertrophy. Keep the weight relatively low because their skill level is low, and adding a lot of weight on a low skilled lifter is a recipe for injury. So we want to keep the weights relatively light, keep the repetitions relatively high, and get a lot of practice. A lot of reps means a lot of practice, so they can really learn the movements. When we move to level 2, now we integrate our 8-5-3 method and our repeat effort method. So they'll do a primary exercise that follows the 8s, the 5s, and the 3s, and then they'll do accessory exercises that follow the 12s, 10s, and 8s. Now then we get to level 3 and we combine all 3 of our rep schemes. So we have a primary exercise that follows 8, 5, and 3. We have a dynamic effort exercise that is reverse programmed, reverse cycled. that goes 3, 4, 5. And then, of course, our repeat efforts to maintain hypertrophy with our 12s, 10s, and 8s. And that's really what the level 3 program looks like. So that's how we assign rep schemes to each different level to build that multi-level vertically aligned program. All right, I wanted to touch on the Olympic lifts and really explosive lifting. Learning to jump, learning to apply force is a skill, and we have to scaffold that as a curriculum the same way we do math, for example. So we don't just throw an Olympic lift, you don't just throw calculus on a student. You have to work yourself backwards. So if we want our level 3 kids to be able to clean or snatch or jerk, well, we have to work backwards from that. So in level 1, they learn to push. We want them to learn how to push into the ground and apply force through general physical preparation and full body exercise. Level 2, we're talking pushing and jumping. So leaving the ground, using that force to propel yourself up. And then of course, level 3, we're going push, jump, punch, where they're doing a full Olympic lift. So this has been successful for us, and Joe Ken's push, jump, punch, I think is the most clear-cut way to teach Olympic lifting. You know, our students are not Olympic lifters. Our students are athletes. So we're trying to teach the lift to transfer to the field and transfer to life. We're not trying to teach the lift to be the best at the lift. So I think my thought pattern and Coach Ken's thought pattern are aligned on that, where we have to keep the goals and keep the main thing the main thing. So we might not have kids catching lifts super low, but we are teaching them to push, jump, punch, produce power, and absorb power. So Olympic lifting is part of our program. So I want to touch on how we scaffold that. But I really encourage you to dive in to Coach Ken's push, jump, punch, because I feel like it's a really smooth way to integrate the Olympic lifts with athletes. Okay, so building templates. Templates are key to multi-level program because you need a guiding light to say, okay, all of our programs are the same, but they're not the same at all. So how do we write a workout? How do we get started? Well, here are my big 4. A double leg exercise, a single leg exercise, upper body push, and an upper body pull. That's where we start every program. Now, what a double leg exercise looks for a level 1 and what a double leg exercise looks for a level 3 can be completely different. But all of us are doing these movements. So let's get into how we assign exercises based on the level. So here's an example of a level 3 template. And I wanted to show you the level 3 template because it involves everything. And then you can work backwards from there, and I think it gets maybe more simple, less variables when you're dealing with just repeat effort rep schemes. So on Monday, we would do a max effort double leg, a repeat effort single leg, a dynamic effort upper body push, and a repeat effort upper body pull. We can then throw in core and arms and pump up and whatever your goals are outside of that. You can throw in a supersets or a finisher or a team warm up, but this is really the heart of what we're doing. And then we stack stuff on the outside. And a lot of that is based on time, based on space, based on a lot of variables that you're dealing with your facility, even stuff outside of your athlete. But this stuff is how we run our core, and then we build from the outside. So Wednesday, max effort upper body push. Probably know we bench on Wednesdays. Max effort single leg, repeat effort double leg, dynamic effort upper body pull. And then we move over to Friday, dynamic effort double leg, dynamic effort single leg, repeat effort upper body push, max effort upper body pull. Every exercise has touched each rep scheme. We move them around based on space, based on time, based on different variables. For example, we have full racks in our facility. So if I want somebody being able to squat on the inside and the outside, and then I program chin-ups afterwards, that's going to be a little bit of a conflict. So we move things around just on logistics. But what I do want is I want every category to hit every rep scheme throughout the week. So let me show you a better example, a more specific example of how we do that. So here we go. So remember, we had max effort double leg. That's our back squat following the 8-5-3 method. Then we do a single leg repeat effort, single leg glute bridge. Close grip pause bench for our dynamic effort, reverse cycle. And then a repeat effort pull, barbell rows. You can see how we do it on Wednesday. We go max effort bench press, max effort single leg, repeat effort double leg, and then a dynamic effort pull. And a med ball slam for us is a dynamic effort pull because we're working on firing the lats and snapping down at the shoulder. So that's how we do that on Wednesday. And then Friday, trap bar jump, reverse cycled, single leg broad jump, reverse cycled. And now we're going repeat effort upper body push, max effort upper body pull. But again, the order of this and what day you do what is really based on your situation. So this is more just a general example of how you could lay out a week, but you can move things around the way that you need to move things. And then sometimes you find that things fall into a routine. We normally the squat on Monday, bench on Wednesday, trap bar jump on Friday. By Friday, our kids are pretty worn down. We've trained hard all week. They sometimes are playing that weekend. So I like to really have them fired up and feeling good going into the weekend. So we've found that max effort, kind of that A block moves really smooth from us, but everything below that is really based on logistics of your room and your space. So I just wanted to give you guys an outline of how we're melding all of these moving parts together. It can seem like there's a lot of different wheels moving here, but once you kind of have it lined up, you can see that you're just checking every box every day. So that's kind of an outline of how we do it. Hopefully that can apply to how you train. So I wanted to show you how we implement this in TeamBuildr. So this is what our iPads look like on our racks. So, you see the three different levels, and then we break out a basketball soccer program because those kids are super busy. They're super invested in the program. And we do have some sports specific programs throughout the year. We do a baseball in-season program, but that is a little bit unique. But I just wanted to show you guys how this kind of works. You can see like the level ones are doing tens, while level twos and threes are doing fives. You can see the level three has block cleans, where level two has stiff leg deadlift with a shrug. So there's exercise progression and regression, and then a lot of accessories after that. So just wanted to give you a snapshot of how it looks in action. And all this was taken from a day where all of these people were in the room trained together at the same time. And that's a critical part of a multi-level training system is that we have one, twos, and threes all in the room all at the same time. So we have to design a program that can be shared, that can be individualized, but can also be done in a unified way across one facility. Okay, so long-term athletic development. This is a screenshot of a long-term athletic development in action. We talked earlier about how long-term development is non-linear in nature. Well, this is not a linear graph. There is peaks and there are valleys, okay? But this is a graph of a student who just graduated. This was his bench press progress from the 9th grade to his senior year. And you can see that it goes from 100 pounds to almost 300 pounds. But it doesn't go in a straight line. There's peaks and valleys and dips, but this is one of our most consistent students, and you can see how the consistency, all those data points paid off. The other cool thing I think is that you can almost see when the program adjusted. So you can see when they built up and then dipped and then built up again, working on that super compensation that we all know. Now, what I really drive home to our students, especially when we transition phases. So let's say we just finished 3 weeks of eights on bench press, and we're about to start 3 weeks of fives. Well, we might see a dip off in performance only to see a super compensation on the other end. But if I shrink this graph to just what's inside that box and you're living inside that box, you're not feeling so good. You're not feeling so good physically, but probably even more importantly, you're not feeling so good psychologically. You're thinking this program might not be working. You're thinking these numbers not be right. You're thinking you might have gotten weaker. But showing students where the roadmap is, showing students where you're headed, and that there's a plan, I think is extremely important. So training is not going to be linear, especially for high school kids dealing with all the variables that we've already kind of addressed. So I think it's really important that when you notice a student that is in these dips, to pull them aside and explain to them that this is the plan. This is part of the plan. And the only way to continue to progress is to keep going. So I want to share one more graph that I use to illustrate this to our students. So this graph here is the history of the US stock market from opening, I think, until 2020. So you can see here that there's all these crises along the history of time, right? Where the market crashed and built and crashed and built. But the market is always going up if you're in it long enough. And that's the same as training. So if you stay in the market, if you stay in training, you will get stronger. But if you take all of your money out, let's say at this data point here at 1929 crash and Great Depression, well, then you're never going to be able to see that boom, let's say later on in the graph. Now the market's a little bit different because we don't all have the time to stay in it, but I think it is a good example for our students to show them that the longer you're in it, the longer you're training, the more we can ensure ongoing participation in long-term athletic development, the more I can almost guarantee you progress. It's the starting and the starting and the stopping that really negates any development. So again, that's why it is key for our level ones to love training, for our level twos to love training, for our level threes to love training, to make these workouts enjoyable. That's why the max effort, the as many as possible sets are so valuable because they get to max out every day. And who doesn't love to max out? So they get to go as hard as they can every day, whatever that day is whatever is possible to them that day, they can push it and enjoy training, see the progress in real time, feel it when their number goes up, when they hit 11 instead of 8, and they can taste the progress. So I think it's really important to design a program that shows them where they're going so that they can feel that progress in real time because we all want instant gratification. Training is a long game. But as much as we can give them that instant gratification, it's going to keep them in the market long and longer, and then we can see better gains a long time. So that wraps up what I have to offer for today. That's my contact information there, my email. I'm most active on Instagram. That's my Instagram handle. So I try to highlight the kind of training that we're doing here to maybe motivate or share or help some other coaches elsewhere. I love talking to coaches. A lot of times the high school world can be isolating because we might be the only coach at our school. So please contact me. I cannot thank you enough for taking interest in watching and listening to this. It's really humbling and means a lot. So if I can be of any help, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you to TeamBuildr, and I hope to talk to all of you guys soon. All right, thanks again.